docking bay still smelled like burned metal when the human ship arrived. Small sparks drifted in the air like lazy fireflies. Emergency lights painted everything in soft red pulses. Crew members from different species rushed back and forth, their voices layered in a storm of clicks, hums, and sharp tones. At the center of the chaos lay a small alien cub on a floating stretcher. The cub's name was Lumo. His silver skin had turned dull and dry. His breathing came in short, uneven bursts. A faint glow under his skin flickered like a dying light. Every few seconds, his small hands twitched. Tarek stood beside the stretcher, his forefingers wrapped tightly around the railing. His tall frame trembled, despite his effort to appear calm. Lumo was not just another cub. He was family. And right now, he was slipping away. Temperature rising again, said a medic, her voice tight. Unknown reaction, none of the stabilizers are holding. Another medic injected a glowing fluid into Lumo's arm. The cub's glow flared bright, then dimmed again. Tarek's chest tightened. Do something, he demanded, his voice cracking. You said your medicine could adapt to any biology. It should, but his system is rejecting everything. A ripple of unease spread through the bay. That was when the airlock hissed open. The human stepped in quietly. He wore a simple gray uniform with sleeves rolled to his elbows. A small medical pack hung at his side. His name tag read Eli. He paused just inside the bay, taking in the scene with steady eyes. Permission to assist, Eli said calmly. Several heads turned. A few officers exchanged uncertain looks. A human medic? One whispered. Tarek didn't care about politics or pride. He saw only one more chance. Help him, Tarek said. Eli approached the stretcher slowly, careful not to crowd the medics. He crouched beside Lumo and observed. His eyes tracked the cub's breathing, the flickering glow, the trembling fingers. He did not reach for a scanner. He did not inject anything. Instead, he gently placed 2 fingers on Lumo's wrist and closed his eyes for a moment. The bay fell strangely quiet. What is he doing? Someone muttered. Eli opened his eyes. He's overheated. His system is fighting itself. You're pushing it harder with every stimulant. That is impossible, a medic snapped. We are stabilizing. You're escalating, Eli said softly. He needs to come down, not up. The alien medics hesitated. Tarek leaned forward. Can you help him? Ellie nodded once. I can try. He stood and motioned to a nearby assistant. I need hot water. Clean container. If you have any basic plant storage, bring it. Hot? Water? The assistant repeated. Yes, Eli said simply. Minutes later, a steaming container was placed in his hands. Eli opened his pack and removed a small sealed pouch filled with dried leaves and crushed herbs. The scent hit the air instantly. Warm, earthy, gentle. Several aliens recoiled in surprise. Eli sprinkled the herbs into the water. Steam curled upward, carrying the aroma across the bay. The tension in the room shifted in a way no one expected. Shoulders loosened. Breathing slowed. Even Tarek felt it. What is that? He asked quietly. Tea, Eli said. The word meant nothing to the others. He waited, watching the color deepen in the water. Then he poured a small amount into a cup and let it cool. He knelt beside Lumo again. Easy, Eli whispered. He guided a small sip to the cub's lips. For a moment nothing happened. Then Lumo's breathing slowed. The flickering glow under his skin steadied. The tightness in his small face softened. His fingers unclenched. A medic checked the readings. Her eyes widened. Temperature dropping, she said. Rapid stabilization. The bay filled with stunned silence. Tarek stared at the monitor, then at Eli. What did you give him? Something warm, Eli replied. Something gentle. Lumo's eyes fluttered open. He looked around, confused but calm. When he saw Tarek, a weak smile formed. Tarek, the cub murmured. Tarek let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. His legs nearly gave out. He's stable, the medic confirmed. Fully stable. A wave of whispers spread across the bay. Impossible. No chemical reaction detected. It's just heated plant matter. Ellie prepared another small cup and handed it to Tarek. Let him sip slowly. Tarek accepted it carefully, as if holding something sacred. Lumo drank and color returned to his skin. The cub sighed contentedly. The sound echoed through the bay like a signal that the crisis had passed. Fleet officers began recording everything. Scanners hovered around the cup. Data streamed across displays. The results only deepened the mystery. No toxins, no advanced compounds. One officer looked at Eli. This cured him? Eli shook his head gently. It helped his body calm down. Sometimes that's enough. The idea seemed almost offensive to the precision of alien medicine. And yet, Lumo was sitting up now, blinking sleepily, very much alive. Tarek clasped Eli's forearm. You saved him. I gave him support, Eli said. He did the rest. The words spread through the bay. Support, warmth, calm. Concepts rarely spoken during emergencies. An officer cleared his throat. We will require samples for study. Eli smiled faintly. You can have the recipe. Recipe. How to make it. The officer stared, unsure if this was humor. Hours later, the story had traveled across multiple ships. A human cured an unknown biological crisis with a drink. Crew members whispered in corridors. Medical teams replayed recordings. Some laughed in disbelief. Others watched in silence. On the human ship, Eli cleaned his tools when a soft knock came at the door. He opened it to find a tall, alien officer shifting awkwardly. Yes? Eli asked. The officer coughed, poorly. I am experiencing mild internal discomfort, the officer announced. Eli raised an eyebrow. Are you? Yes, the officer said quickly. Very mild, but concerning. Eli stepped aside. Come in. Moments later, steam curled through the room again. The officer inhaled deeply. His posture softened. What is this feeling? He asked. Relaxation, Eli said. The officer drank. His shoulders dropped even more. I feel better, he admitted. Eli smiled. Good. The officer hesitated at the door. If anyone asks, this was medical. Of course, Eli said. The next morning a line stretched down the corridor. Aliens of every shape stood pretending to cough, sigh, or hold their stomachs. Some rehearsed symptoms under their breath. Eli opened the door, took one look, and sighed. A chorus of weak groans answered him. He stepped back inside. All right, one at a time. And somewhere deep in the fleet network, the phrase began to circulate like a quiet legend. The human miracle cup. By the time command noticed the growing traffic toward the human vessel, half the fleet had already decided they might be feeling just a little unwell. By the next morning, the human ship's galley had become a strange kind of clinic. Aliens of every shape, size, and color hovered outside the door, each claiming some new minor ailment. Headaches, nausea, fatigue, anxiety. Every symptom seemed to be invented on the spot. Eli walked along the line with calm steps, noting the anxious expressions, the awkward attempts to mimic symptoms. A tall, blue-skinned officer rubbed his temples while trying to appear faint, while a four-armed engineer limped slowly, exaggerating each step. Eli barely suppressed a small smile. He had expected curiosity, but not this level of commitment. Tarek joined him at the entrance, arms crossed. It's gotten worse than I imagined, he said quietly. They aren't just curious. They are desperate. They are learning something, Eli replied. It is not about medicine. It is about comfort. Bram, a human liaison officer assigned to coordinate fleet interactions, arrived carrying a tablet. His face was tight with concern. Ellie, command is asking about the situation. They think the tea could be dangerous. They want lab tests, scans, anything to explain how this is working. I understand, but you cannot test comfort. You can only observe it. Bram frowned. They won't understand. Some officers already suspect this is manipulation. The steam rose gently, curling in the morning light of the docking bay. One by one, aliens stepped forward. They sipped, and slowly their shoulders relaxed. Breathing evened. Eyes softened. Even the engineer with 4 arms stopped faking limpness for a moment to watch the effect. The observers were stunned. They had been trained to expect measurable results. Chemicals, radiation, nanotech, not this. Yet the readings from their sensors confirmed it. No foreign compounds. No chemicals beyond the leaves and water. Just warmth, aroma, and calm. Rumors spread through the fleet faster than official communications. Within a few hours, other ships began reporting mild cases of mysterious discomfort. Officers claimed headaches, stomach unease, and stress, each with increasing frequency. It became clear the entire fleet wanted the human tea. Fleet leaders were not pleased. They saw the long lines, the repeated requests, and the way crews were clustering near the human ship. Officer Rana, a stern, gray-skinned tactician with piercing eyes, was dispatched to investigate. She boarded Eli's ship expecting deception, perhaps even sabotage. Instead, she found laughter. Alien crews of different species shared stories while waiting, watching each other sip tea. The atmosphere was light and curious. The hum of anxiety that had plagued the fleet was replaced by something that looked a lot like hope. Rana's eyes narrowed. She had seen panic and despair on countless missions. Now she was watching something completely alien and completely effective. She interviewed Lumo, who was now fully recovered. The cub described the tea as warm, soft, like being safe. Safe? It's just a drink. It helps me feel brave when I am scared. The simplicity struck her. In all her years in command, she had never seen morale restored by something so small. She took careful notes, reluctant to admit it, but intrigued nonetheless. Meanwhile, fleet communications became a mess. Every ship reported minor illness at once. Panic signals mixed with laughter, confusion with calm. Officers demanded explanations, subordinates complained of missing supplies, and engineers tried to duplicate the drink without instruction. Eli, however, remained calm. He broadcasted simple instructions. Water, leaves, gentle steeping. The effects were immediate. Even inexperienced crews created something close to the original cup. Smiles returned, calm spread, and panic eased. Bram watched in disbelief. This, Adamiga, simple ritual is stabilizing the fleet. Without orders, without command intervention. Eli nodded. Humans have used comfort for centuries. Food, warmth, ritual. It works because it touches what technology cannot reach. The fleet's medical officers were not pleased. A debate began. How could a harmless drink, a simple act, change morale faster than any scanner, any stimulant, any protocol? The logic seemed impossible. They began running lab tests. Every result confirmed Eli's claim. It was harmless, but undeniably effective. By the end of the day, the line outside the galley had grown so long that command sent an envoy to restrict access. But even as restrictions were announced, crews continued to feign symptoms, some inventive, some exaggerated, all sincere in their desire for the warmth the humans provided. A tense standoff began. Command insisted on control. The fleet wanted comfort. Officers argued. Eli simply prepared another steaming cup, handed it to a trembling officer, and waited as he relaxed. The lines, the waiting, the shared ritual. It had become more than tea. It was a symbol, a quiet rebellion, a unifying act. Each cup was a small victory against fear, against exhaustion, against chaos. At night, Eli walked through the now empty galley. The aroma lingered. Lumo slept soundly nearby, and Tarek watched over him. Eli poured himself a cup, sipped, and allowed himself a small smile. Tomorrow, the line would be longer. Tomorrow, more ships would send crews with fake symptoms, hoping to taste the human miracle. And Eli would be ready. Somewhere in the fleet, Officer Rana reviewed her notes and frowned. Humans had done something impossible. They had reminded everyone that strength was not just technology, not just numbers, not just weapons. Sometimes it was a cup of warmth, a moment of calm, a simple gesture that carried hope across the stars. The human tea had become legend overnight, and the fleet was just beginning to understand its power. The fleet had never seen anything like it. Reports came in from every direction. Minor illnesses, strange requests, lines of aliens outside the human galley. Eli watched as his simple act of brewing tea had become a fleet-wide event. It was no longer just about the cub, Lumo. It was about the entire fleet finding calm in a storm of fear. Officer Rana arrived aboard the human ship once again. Her gray skin gleamed under the docking lights, and her eyes were sharper than ever. She had been skeptical before, expecting manipulation or sabotage. Now, she had to admit, something extraordinary was happening. I need to understand this, she said, her voice firm. How can a simple drink affect morale so dramatically? Eli gestured to the galley. It's not just a drink. It's comfort, ritual, attention, something your scanners can't measure, something your crew remembers when they are afraid. Rana frowned. You are suggesting humans are using emotion as a weapon? Ellie shook his head. Not a weapon. A bridge. Something small that can prevent panic. That's all. Outside, the line of aliens had grown even longer. Entire brigades of crew members, some pretending to cough or hold their stomachs, waited patiently. A few laughed quietly at their friends' exaggerated symptoms. Even officers who had once resisted now took small cups, trying to understand what was happening. Tarek approached Eli. They are learning more than comfort, he said softly. They are learning patience, cooperation, sharing. These small acts, they change how the fleet thinks. Eli nodded. He poured another cup for Lumo, who was now sitting quietly at the edge of the galley, watching with wide eyes. The cub sipped slowly and smiled faintly. He no longer needed the tea as a medicine. It had become a symbol of calm, of trust, of connection. Across the fleet, crews tried to recreate the human tea. Some failed, some succeeded. Even imperfect cups brought similar reactions. Relaxed shoulders, eased breathing, faint smiles. Reports flooded in. The fleet was stabilizing. Panic that had gripped ships after minor alerts was melting away. Coordination improved. Communication improved. Morale had risen. Rana took notes with a frown. She had trained for years to control fleets, to measure strength with technology, strategy, and numbers. Now she was watching results that defied logic, achieved with warmth, steam, and leaves and water. A fleet alert sounded. Ships reported sudden navigation anomalies. The signals were scrambled. Tension surged instantly across the entire network. Panic threatened to rise again. Ellie stood calmly. Prepare tea, he instructed over a secure channel. 1 cup per crew. Follow the instructions carefully. Across the fleet, alien crews paused in their tracks. The instructions were simple. Boil water, steep leaves, sip slowly. Yet even in chaos, crews obeyed. Ships that had been on the verge of misalignment and collision adjusted their courses with care. Communication cleared. Teams worked together again. The calming ritual spread faster than fear. Officer Bram looked on in amazement. This is coordination, he said. Without orders, without command interference. They are stabilizing themselves. Ellie smiled faintly. Humans have used rituals like this for centuries. Warmth, shared moments, attention. They work because they remind people of safety, trust, and connection. Lumo climbed onto a low table, watching as the officers and engineers sipped the tea. The cub's eyes gleamed with excitement and understanding. He had become a symbol, the proof that even the smallest gestures could ripple across an entire fleet. Rana approached Eli once more. I underestimated this. You are teaching something we cannot measure, cannot control, yet it is more powerful than anything we have tried. Ellie nodded. Technology can heal the body. Ritual can heal the mind. Sometimes one is just as important as the other. The next hours passed with a strange calm settling over the fleet. Ships that had been in minor distress maintained perfect formation. Crews shared stories while drinking tea. The human galley became a hub of unity, laughter, and quiet pride. Aliens whispered about the miracle of the cup, about how the humans had shown them something beyond science, beyond command. Yet not all were pleased. Commanders debated the implications. Could this small act be replicated for strategic advantage? Could humans use comfort and calm as a tool in negotiations, in conflicts, in fleet-wide operations? The questions were unsettling. Meanwhile, Eli continued to pour and serve, watching as small victories unfolded with each cup. Crew members, once tense and fearful, now laughed quietly, whispered advice, or simply shared moments of companionship. By evening, the fleet had learned something unexpected. The tea was not magic, not technology. It was human. And human traits, care, attention, ritual, could influence even the largest and most diverse collection of beings. Lumo lay on a cot, finally sleeping peacefully. Tarek stood beside him, reflecting on the strange events. What had started as a desperate attempt to save one cub had transformed the mood of an entire fleet. The ripple effect of comfort had spread further than anyone imagined. As night fell, a quiet hum of contentment ran through the ships. Communication channels buzzed softly with gratitude, not panic. Reports of illness were replaced with reports of well-being. The human miracle cup had become more than a drink. It was a symbol of resilience, hope, and the unexpected power of simple gestures. Rana reviewed her notes one last time before leaving the galley. She knew the fleet would never be the same. Humans had reminded them of something vital. Strength was not always measured by power, numbers, or technology. Sometimes it was measured by small acts of care, by patience, by the courage to share warmth in the middle of fear. The fleet slept better that night, even as the stars outside shone cold and distant. For the first time in many cycles, fear had lost its grip, and the human ship, quiet in the docking bay, continued to offer its simple, powerful gift, a cup of tea. The human ship had become the center of attention across the fleet. Aliens were arriving not out of duty but out of desire. Lines of crew members formed in every corridor, each claiming minor discomfort to secure a cup of the human tea. It had become more than medicine, more than a ritual. It was a symbol, a source of calm in a universe of tension. Command was beginning to worry. Fleet leadership sent orders restricting access to the human galley. Only official missions, only critical cases. But the restrictions backfired immediately. Crew members resisted, some exaggerating symptoms more dramatically, some even staging fainting spells to reach the galley. Entire teams protested quietly but persistently, holding their ground in the corridors. Eli watched as the humans and aliens juggled trays of tea, sharing warmth and calm. Tarek stood nearby, monitoring Lumo, who was now fully recovered and playful, though he understood the significance of the ritual. He saw the way each cup brought a small victory. Calm faces, eased breaths, laughter in soft tones. Then came the first crisis. A deep space anomaly disrupted navigation systems. Ships began drifting dangerously close to each other. Alarms rang across multiple channels. Stress spiked instantly. Crew members panicked. Orders conflicted. The fleet teetered on the edge of chaos. Officer Rana quickly assessed the situation. Panic was spreading faster than the anomaly. She contacted Eli, knowing he had a solution. "We need calm now," she said. "Can your method help? It's the only thing that can stabilize them immediately." He broadcasted instructions across the fleet. Simple, clear, precise. Boil water. Steep leaves. Sip slowly. Focus on calm. No lectures. No alarms. No equipment beyond what they had. Just the ritual of comfort. The effect was immediate. Crew members paused, set down their controls, and followed the instructions. Even in the tension of near disaster, hands worked together. Breathing evened. Communication cleared. The ships adjusted courses with cooperation rather than fear. The anomaly remained a threat, but the fleet was no longer in panic. Rana watched in awe. She had relied on years of strategy, drills, and technology to stabilize fleets. Now, Simple T was doing what no protocol could. Meanwhile, Command debated furiously. Should they classify this ritual as a strategic asset? Could humans be using it to influence fleet behavior? Some officers argued that Eli had inadvertently introduced a new form of control. Others admitted grudgingly that the results were undeniable. Within the galley, Eli continued to serve. Crew members drank, shared smiles, whispered thanks. Some spoke of fear that had haunted them for cycles. Some admitted they had never felt calm in the midst of such chaos. Each cup restored not just their nerves, but their ability to work together. Lumo climbed onto a table, observing with wide eyes. He had learned that this simple act could ripple across an entire fleet. He played quietly with the small toy, smiling as he saw the adults around him recover their composure. His small presence reminded everyone that the tea had begun as a life-saving measure, not a tool of influence. Tarek leaned close to Eli. "They are learning more than comfort," he said. "They are learning unity, trust, sharing, even patience. This is changing them, one cup at a time." Eli nodded. Sometimes the simplest things are the most powerful. Over the next hours, the fleet recovered. Navigation stabilized, coordination improved, and tension faded. Crews shared stories, laughed quietly, and, for the first time in many cycles, slept without fear. Command could not ignore the results. They had to recognize the ritual's effect. At night, Eli cleaned the galley and prepared a cup for himself. He sipped slowly and looked out at the docking bay. The lights of the fleet shimmered across the water-like surfaces of space. Somewhere deep among the ships, crew members were following the same instructions. Across the fleet, humans and aliens had discovered a shared ritual of calm and trust. Rana stood nearby, quietly taking notes. She had come to the human ship expecting skepticism, perhaps to control or investigate. Instead, she had witnessed something profound. Strength, she realized, was not always measured by technology, numbers, or weapons. Sometimes it was measured by patience, by care, by small acts of kindness shared at the right moment. Lumo yawned and curled up near Tarek. The cub had no idea how far the effect of a single cup had spread. He only knew that he was safe, and that the warmth of the tea made the universe feel a little less cold. The human ship, quiet under the soft hum of docking lights, continued to offer its gift. Not medicine, not weapons, not strategy. Just warmth, calm, and the reminder that even in the vast cold of space, small acts could ripple across the stars, changing hearts and minds and stabilizing entire fleets. Months had passed since the human ship first arrived in the fleet. What began as a desperate attempt to save a single cub, Lumo, had evolved into a fleet-wide tradition. The simple act of brewing tea had become a symbol, a ritual that crossed species, ships, and ranks. It was no longer a novelty or an emergency measure, it was a cultural bridge. Crew members queued patiently outside the human galley every day, some out of habit, some out of desire. The lines included officers, engineers, pilots, and even diplomats. Aliens of every color, size, and shape approached the humans with cautious hope, hands trembling slightly as they carried their cups. The act of drinking tea together had become a moment of peace, a shared understanding that comfort could bind even the most diverse fleet. Eli moved among the crowds, pouring, instructing, and observing. Each cup was served with the same care he had shown to Lumo months ago. The ritual had changed the atmosphere of the entire fleet. Ships that once struggled to coordinate now operated smoothly. Conflicts that had simmered in quiet corners were replaced with quiet conversations over warm cups. The power of patience, care, and comfort became evident in every action. Lumo had grown taller, stronger, more confident. He still followed Eli around the galley, watching with fascination as the ritual continued. The cub had become a symbol, a reminder of why the tea mattered. Crew members spoke of him with respect, smiling whenever he approached. The tiny silver cub, once so weak, now embodied the strength of the simple human gesture. Officer Rana returned to the human ship for the summit of fleet leaders. Tensions ran high as diplomats and commanders from various factions assembled to discuss future operations. The room was thick with anxiety, distrust, and the weight of responsibility. It was the first time such a large assembly had gathered since the ritual began. Eli was invited to demonstrate the tea ritual. Some delegates hesitated, skeptical of the simplicity. They had seen the human medicine, technology, and strategy, but this, a cup of warm water with leaves, seemed trivial. Yet, one by one, they followed Eli's calm instructions, steeping the leaves, inhaling the aroma, and sipping slowly. The effect was immediate and undeniable. Tension eased. Breathing became even. Eyes softened. Conversation started without force, and laughter, gentle at first, spread across the room. Alliances formed more easily, agreements were reached, and long-standing disagreements softened in the warm glow of shared ritual. The summit became a success not through negotiation or command, but through calm, shared moments. Rana watched quietly from the side, her notes filled with observations. Well, she had come expecting political games, strategy, and control. Instead, she had witnessed the power of a human tradition. The fleet leaders, despite their pride and suspicion, could not deny the change. Morale, cooperation, and unity were tangible, real, and measurable in ways that scanners and reports could not capture. After the summit, gifts of dried leaves were exchanged. Each species contributed something from their homeworld, creating a shared collection of blends for the human tea. The practice was no longer human alone. It had become the fleet's shared culture, a unifying force. Lumo, now playful and confident, served alongside Eli, handing cups to smaller crew members and watching as their faces relaxed. Tarek stood nearby, quietly observing the changes in the fleet. The cub's recovery had sparked a ripple that reached across the stars, transforming fear into calm, suspicion into trust. Eli poured himself a cup and sipped slowly. He looked out at the ships docked across the bay, shimmering in the starlight. Each light represented crews now calmer, more cooperative, more willing to trust one another. The human gesture had not only healed a cub, but it had healed the fleet itself in a way no technology or command could. Somewhere deep in the communication networks, messages spread. Humans had introduced a new type of power, a quiet power of patience, care, and ritual. Commanders and diplomats alike marveled at the simplicity and effectiveness. Humanity's strength was not just in technology, in weapons, or in numbers. Sometimes it was in small acts, gentle, deliberate, and full of care. As night settled over the docked fleet, Lumo curled up beside Tarek, eyes closing in peaceful sleep. The cub had no idea how far the tea had reached, but he knew it had kept him alive. Across the fleet, the crew members slept soundly, their minds at ease, their hearts warmed by something more powerful than fear or strategy. Eli cleaned the galley, placing the used cups carefully aside. The ritual was complete for the day, but the effect would last. Ships would continue their operations with a new understanding, new cooperation, and new respect. The fleet had learned a lesson that no drill could teach. Strength was in unity, care, and small acts that reminded everyone of their shared humanity. The human ship remained quiet under the soft hum of docking lights. The stars beyond were cold and distant, yet inside, warmth had taken root. Across the fleet, the cups of tea, the simple gesture, had created a tradition that would endure. A simple act, born of necessity, had transformed the fleet into something stronger, more connected, more alive. The human miracle cup had become more than a drink. It had become a symbol, a shared ritual, and the proof that even in the vastness of space, small acts could change the hearts of millions.